Sorry, nerds. No anime cities this week.
I like to
We're
get
getting
shit-faced.
sophisticated with this one. I'm Mike Dangerous,
I
and this is Talking Shots.
don't know. That's about all. I like
Sword sheath, kiss the return of the blade and slice shade, getting paid until my silhouette fades. Immersing.
This is gonna be gross. Theater's an interesting medium. It's one of the oldest forms of entertainment, and I'm gonna get this out of the way now. In a literal sense, no, theater is not dead. So that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Just kidding. Broadway is a multi-billion-dollar industry in and of itself, and I'm sure you probably have a theater near where you live. People have made the argument for years that theater was going to succumb to the dominance of the motion picture. The idea was that theater could just do more than theater could. What the f*** did I just say? The idea was that movies could just do more than theater could. To an extent, this is true, especially today. But the bottom line is people don't see a play for the same reason they go see a movie. Movie spectacle and theater spectacle are two different things. You simply can't replicate the amazing tech of a show like Wicked in a movie, or the beautiful vocal performances of a show like Les Mis on screen. God knows they tried. We don't care if you're singing live. It's not really live if it's in a movie, is it? It doesn't translate because they're two different mediums. All art forms are basically defined by a set of limitations. Movies are basically moving images and a collection of sounds inside of a frame. Books tell a story using written language alone. Video games are even limited by the way you interact with the hardware that the game is on. Theater is no different. Theater needs two things to exist: an audience and performers in the same space. By definition, any live event is essentially theater. From Cirque du Soleil to small improv clubs, theater has a broad definition. This makes it very accessible. You don't need a ton of film equipment like you do to make a movie, or the knowledge and means to write code like with video games. All you really need is an audience to perform for. This is where things get tricky though. I mentioned spectacle because it's an important thing to note. A major part of the theater-going and even movie-going experience is the idea that you're going to witness something you can't get at home. But not every movie is Avengers, and not every play is Phantom. What about the shows that aim to tell a story first? Something simpler, not so flashy. Well, there is where we run into a problem. These days, streaming services have been stepping up big time. It's becoming harder and harder to convince audiences to leave their home to go see a movie. Now you're asking them to travel twice as far and spend almost 4 times as much as a movie. That's a tall order. Broadway has always had the benefit of having celebrity names to back their shows. But what about those theaters that aren't Broadway? As much as I hate to say this because I know it's going to piss off a lot of people, Broadway is not the be-all, end-all of theater. Broadway, by its very nature, is counterintuitive to theater's accessibility. In a city that's expensive to travel to and can somehow have... What? I'm not drunk. I'm drunk. It's in a city that's expensive to travel to. It can have shows with ticket prices that can be almost $300 to $400, starting at $300 to $400. As popular as Hamilton is, the point becomes kind of mute when your target audience can't even afford to see the show. Now, I'm not trying to sit here and say that Broadway is evil and Broadway is killing theater because that's simply not true. Broadway itself has a really long and interesting history that could probably get its own video. What I guess I'm trying to say is that when someone asks the question, is theater dead, they're not saying that within the context of Broadway. They're saying, what about theater outside of Broadway? I live in Miami, for example, and we have a relatively healthy theater scene. But even our biggest regional theaters function off of a fraction of Broadway budgets. The spectacle and star power that exists on Broadway does not exist here, and that makes it extremely difficult to get people to come see shows. And that's a shame, because there's a lot of really good plays and projects being started by people down here. So back to the question, is theater dead? Well, yes and no. It's not exactly a simple question to answer. What I can say, with any certainty, is that as theater creators, we have to stop trying to be Broadway. The bottom line is, no matter where you are in the world, there is a demand for live entertainment. It's theater's very limitation that makes it so unique. You simply can't get live entertainment streamed to you. I mean, you can, But nothing is quite like being in the room where it happened. I wrote that. I wrote that in earnest, and I'm saying it on camera, and I hate myself for it. What we need to do is get creative about the way that we use the spaces that we do have. Miami Motel Stories is a great example about creating experiences you simply cannot get at home. The audience interacts directly with the actors as they get to experience the history of various hotels and motels in Miami. If you own a venue, be more open to renting them to smaller artists who are willing to use that space in more creative and inventive ways that isn't necessarily theater. Hell, even the Talking Shots Christmas party we threw was in a theater's black box. Theater isn't dead, but it's definitely changing. And those of us who probably fell in love with it in our high schools, community colleges, or even community theaters need to continue to innovate and expand what our ideas of theater can be if we want this industry to survive. The best artists in the world made their name by pushing the boundaries of their mediums. In some ways, those limitations are what forced creative solutions. Unfortunately, we can't all work in Broadway theaters, and that's okay. Theater and entertainment as we know it is changing, and it's going to be those who adapt that keep theater alive. So what do you think? I'm honestly curious. If you're not into theater, what would get you to come to a theater? And if you are into theater, what do you think about the status of your local scene? If you're in South Florida, I know a lot of friends who work in this industry. What is your take on the status of theater and where it's going? I know a lot of theaters currently are ran by older individuals. You know, as time goes on and those people retire or die. What do you think is going to be the future for theater in South Florida, and moreover, kind of across the world? There's a lot of really talented creators out there, and I'd like to see sort of where things go with this. Don't worry, we'll go back to talking about VHS and 90s movies and anime titties shortly. But this week I did want to hit something a little bit more serious, a little bit more close to home. I'm not running out of ideas. If you didn't know, we're selling shirts. Link in the description and on our Facebook. You should follow us on social media. I never post because I'm the worst, but you should follow us anyway because that's where you'll see the links to everything. I just kicked the light. I don't know why you people let me even have this camera because I'm the worst. Anyway, don't forget to like, comment, favorite, and subscribe. I love you.